Good evening and welcome this evening to Children First. This is a program made possible by Cable Access Network Television and by Maryville Academy. I'm Sister Catherine Ryan. I'm privileged to serve as the Executive Director of Maryville, and I am just delighted this evening to introduce our guest, Anne Linnen. Anne, thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Sister. It's nice to be here.
Now, I'd like to start by having our viewers come to know you, Anne, before we talk about our crisis nursery, which we will later in the program. So, can you just tell us, are you a Chicagoan? Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yes, I grew up here in Chicago. Chicago's home. I grew up in Beverly on the southwest side of the city, and then was born and raised in a lovely family consisting of 3 women and my parents.
And whereabouts were you living? What part of the city?
We were on the south side of the city, and my parents still reside there. And from there, I went to Catholic grade school and then transitioned a little bit further north to St. Ignatius for high school. And following that, I went to Indiana University and got, I was an English major and got my master's then following that at WashU School of Medicine in St. Louis.
Okay, now I want to pick up right from when you finished your college degree.
Okay.
And you became a teacher, is that right?
Yes.
And tell us about your teaching years.
I taught in 8th grade. I taught 8th grade at Evergreen Park, which is another southwest area. It's a suburb. And I taught about 130 children, English literature, and loved it. But then that kind of prompted my interest. So I started meeting a lot of kids with special needs because they were being mainstreamed into the classroom, and I decided at that point, after about 8 years being there and receiving accolades, and that it was time for me to investigate further, more about children's disabilities. So that's what prompted me to go to WashU School of Medicine.
In St. Louis?
In St. Louis, yes.
And you received a degree in?
I received my degree in occupational therapy. So I have a master's in occupational therapy, and my focus was in pediatrics, naturally.
So I think our viewers can already tell I'm asking Anne to tell us about her background because it shows that she really does know children, of course. So you moved from education to healthcare, working with occupational therapy, pediatric specialty. Mm-hmm. Now, just help us, what is occupational therapy?
It's a great question. Occupational therapists have multiple roles. In the pediatric setting, we work with children with disabilities, and that could be an orthopedic injury in the hands and, primarily impacting their function. It could be a child who's born with a developmental disability, such as autism or cerebral palsy. It could also be a child who has sensory processing disorder and is unable to, for instance, process, the lights in this room that are occurring, the noise, music, and such. And so we specialize in a lot of different areas. And in pediatrics, a lot of my experience was, ranging from working with children birth through 6, and then, I was also interested in autism for quite some time.
So you have quite a bit of experience with children and special needs of children.
Yes.
Now, what about your own family?
Well, that's interesting that you ask, because I worked primarily, a lot of my research down at WashU was with the little ones, pre-K through 3rd grade. But then, and then I had the experience at junior high with 8th graders. There was, I had 2 4th graders right now, so I'm getting my 4th, 5th grade experience right at middle school. So I have 2 boys, they're 10. And they were born 11 months after my husband and I were married. So they were my great blessing. And Liam and Colin are 4th graders, like I said, at St. Clement. So we've moved north, and we enjoy them immensely.
And your husband's name is?
Joe.
We should give equal billing to Dad,
yes,
right?
So I can't leave him out. So Joe is, met him on a blind date, and he's been my partner and best friend for 11 years. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So we hear about your family. We hear this path that you've had dealing with children, both in education and healthcare. And now I'd like to ask you, you've become familiar with the Crisis Nursery of Maryville Academy.
Yes.
And would you first tell our viewers what is a Crisis Nursery?
Crisis Nursery is a location, and specifically this one's a haven for children who are suffering, whether that be from abuse or neglect, or also just maybe possibly their parents are having an emotional crisis, which can be anything where it's an emergency situation or something that throws off entirely what someone's expectation is and what's been happening in their life. So it's it's a special place that kind of helps people pick up the pieces.
And I'm going to show our viewers how they can find the Crisis Nursery, the location at 4015 North Oak Park Avenue in Chicago, and a phone number and our website. The Crisis Nursery, Maryville's Crisis Nursery, opened a number of years ago. We are the only crisis nursery in northeastern Illinois. So I'm going to come back to you, Anne, now and say, how did you encounter the Crisis Nursery?
Well, I think a lot of it, sister, was curiosity. I was introduced to it by a friend at Catholic Charities, Anne Grossclass, and I have to thank her and continue to do so every day. It is such a special place. When I was in St. Louis, I worked at a haven where children were abused and neglected, and it is very slightly different model from the Crisis Nursery. The Crisis Nursery, like Sister had mentioned, it is the one and only one in Chicagoland area. And statistically, in the fiscal year 2012, in Cook County, there were 32,130 reports or alleged reports of domestic violence and of children who were abused or neglected. And if you really run the numbers, that happens to be about 88 children per day who are suffering in some way. The reason I got involved is because as a mother, as someone who cares for children working in the pediatric field, I know the importance of, birth through 6. It is a critical juncture, as many of you can imagine, in a child's life, where they form, cognition, social emotional skills, and motor skills and sensory skills, where they take in a lot of information, sounds, sight, hearing. And if there's some crisis happening at this point or this juncture in a child's life, this is where you see gaps start to occur in their development, and you start to see this in the whole picture. When I went to WashU in St. Louis, I had a fabulous professor who developed a model called the PEO model, very simply put, and it was person, environment, and occupation. And if you think about it in terms of 3 concentric circles, all of us have a role to play. And the person in this case is the child. Their environment might be in a home where maybe there's a fire. Take that for instance, and then their occupation is to play, just simply play. That's how children learn. And if there's a fire and it's disrupted their entire household, that child is disrupted and it breaks up the family. So you have to think in terms of, what skills these children are losing if there's some type of abuse situation or domestic violence, or if there is a health condition or something that might alter their lives.
Well, I think that it's important for our viewers to have this information once again about how to contact the Crisis Nursery. But before we do that, I just want to make clear, we do not charge the families who come to the Crisis Nursery. So when I show you this information, it isn't as if you pick up the phone, Maryville somehow makes more money. In fact, what it does is create the opportunity for families to reach out to receive this resource. So I'm going to show the information again. The Maryville Crisis Nursery. Here's the address on Oak Park Avenue in Chicago. Here's a phone number. If any of our viewers have need for this service or know someone who does, we hope that you will tell those individuals that there is help, there are people who care, and that lack of financial resources will not be an impediment to receiving this service. Now, Anne, I want to come back to you. Let's talk about some of the specifics about the Crisis Nursery.
Sure.
You talked about the importance of reaching our children from birth through age 6, and in fact, the Crisis Nursery serves children up to age 6. Can you speak a little bit more about, from your experience, about the need you see for a family to be able to reach out to the Crisis Nursery? Clearly, if they have family who can care for the children, they probably don't need this resource. But if they have a situation of loss of a job, do they qualify for the crisis nursery?
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that we all have to remember is we all have safety nets. I know, personally for me, it's been my parents helping me raise my boys, my husband. I have a supportive husband. I have, a great community that I live in and friends, that I can pick up the phone and call. If you don't, that's where the crisis nursery comes into play. And we all either, have a crisis nursery in our life, but some folks out there in the Chicagoland community do not. We service 80 zip codes throughout the Chicagoland area, and there's a desperate need for this type of program. We can help with anything. We have experts that deal with crisis management, and that's what makes the nursery so special. It isn't that these children come and the parents don't get any help. This is a family model. So because we want these children to return with their mother or their father. Several of them, as you know, Sister Kathy, we've had situations from where the mother's had a brain tumor and she had no one to turn to help with the care of her children. So her children were taken to the nursery and cared for by the director and then the case worker that was there, as well as, all of the other caregivers that are present in the setting. And the setting is nurturing. It's wonderful. It is developmentally appropriate, which is why I fell in love with it the first time that I had seen it. You see colors, you see toys, you see every room is organized. It's very theme-based. It's very developmentally appropriate. There's a motor room, there's a sensory room with water play for kids, there's supervision, they read, there's an art room where they get the experience of finger painting, even though it's messy. You have wonderful people that are, taking care of these children and giving them educational opportunities that are enriching. And as we all know, they need those at that beginning stage, in addition to the counseling that they need. People that are experts with, early intervention and know how to talk to a child when they've seen their mother being abused, or if they've seen, or they haven't seen their mother because she's in the hospital with a brain tumor, or if there's been a fire.
So all of these are ways that families can know that these are actually the opportunities, these challenges that will allow a family to use the crisis nursery. And I think you've mentioned medical emergencies, and you've mentioned, I mentioned loss of a job, I guess. Yes. And we'll talk about domestic violence, certainly if a family's been victims of domestic violence, if they have a fire, whatever the emergency is for the family, then they can reach out to the crisis nursery and ask for some support.
Exactly.
And let's go back to something you just mentioned before. You talked about many of the activities, and I want to pick up on the literacy piece, because I know that those of you who work with early childhood development emphasize the importance of literacy for little ones so that they'll have it for the rest of their lives. So would you like to say a little more about that? There's a reading room.
There is a reading room, and every child leaves with a book when they go home, and they're read to quite often throughout the day, as well as in the evening before bed. They have a routine that they follow, and that includes reading, and it's incorporated, as well as word recognition and letter recognition, number recognition, all kinds of stimulating cognitive skills that they're picking up on, and the members that and the instructors there and the caregivers all have been trained and educated in how to work with young children by NACI, and as well as Amy Kendall Lynch, who's the director, runs the place, and she's phenomenal at crisis counseling, and her staff has been trained in all of these areas.
Amy earned her master's degree from the Erickson Institute, as I recall. So
yes,
she brings a lot of that knowledge with. Let's just talk for a moment about a special role that you've taken on for the crisis nursery. Our viewers don't know, but Anne chairs our advisory group for the crisis nursery. Would you talk about the advisory group?
The advisory board was formed 2006, shortly after the nursery was formed. And basically we work in an advisory capacity to support the mission of the crisis nursery, as well as the administration of Maryville Academy. We work to support the strategic plan. We support the director. We support Sister Kathy in whatever requests they have. But mainly the functions are to consult and collaborate, as well as, fundraising and raising awareness about the nursery, so that people out there that might potentially want to come to the nursery are aware of it, as well as just the neighborhood in the Chicagoland area, because we're in need of support continually, whether that's in-kind gifts or monetary support. We also look at long-term evaluation and planning, and we'll primarily work on education and outreach. We have 4 committees, and we have 12 members currently, in addition to several of the Maryville Academy administration that sit on the advisory board with us. The 4 committees that mainly our members participate in are finance, outreach and awareness, volunteer, and
marketing,
special events.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Anne has given countless, I can't say hours, it's much more time than that, to helping our crisis nursery, the mission of the crisis nursery, and the staff, the wonderful staff who work there. So, Anne, I want to say publicly while we're here with our viewers that I'm very grateful for the time you have been giving and continue to give us. It's really selfless and has helped our children a lot. Now, Anne doesn't just sit at the head of the table and direct meetings. She's often hands-on in the crisis nursery volunteering. We have an annual Christmas party,
right,
which Anne is always present at and helping to, would you like to say a little bit about it? Helping to make that a success.
Well, there's many opportunities to get involved, but the Crisis Nursery Christmas Party is really special because we're fortunate that we have a lot of families that really want to be there and make every effort, to get down to Catholic Charities, who kindly donates the space. And, it's just a lovely afternoon where we have a meal for the families, and that's donated by a family.
A family, right.
That, provide food. We have Santa come, and all of the children leave with a gift. There's also different, different activities happening all around the room for the children. So these parents get time to relax. Even at that moment, you just see the tender love in the room by the Maryville administration as well as the volunteers, just to provide relief for some of these families who don't get a chance to sit down without a baby in their hand. You see them holding babies, playing with children. We also have a partnership with University of Illinois at Chicago. Some of the occupational therapists come over from there to play with the kids. And it's a very special event, one that I never want to miss, just because I love seeing all the families enjoy the time there.
So what Anne embodies is a way that a volunteer, we can't have her all the time because she's got a family, she's got important work in occupational therapy, but she gives still countless hours helping our children, and our staff help the children. And we are welcoming volunteers at the Crisis Nursery to assist in, maybe it's just to read a book to a child. Maybe it's to take a child out to our new playground. You want to say something about the new playground and sanctuary?
We recently had a playground donated. The Crisis Nursery shares a building with the healthcare center, which takes in medically fragile children before they transition to home. So once they're out of the hospital, then these children, come to us on the healthcare side of the building. And a lot of these children have special needs, very special needs, medical needs. And what's happened recently is through a gracious donor, they have donated a beautiful playground that's been built outside the Crisis Nursery, which is very developmentally appropriate for children with special needs, adaptive equipment, as well as for the children that come to the nursery birth through 6. So it's a real special place with great toys and equipment and lots of fun to be had.
It's
so
wonderful. I'm going to one more time show our viewers how they can contact the Crisis Nursery if they have a need or they know someone who has a need at 4015 North Oak Park Avenue in Chicago. That's Oak Park and Irving Park. Here's our phone number, 773-205-3600. We also have a website with some pages on all the programs at Maryville, but particularly some pages on the Crisis Nursery. And I think, Anne, do you want to add to what I just said?
Well, I think it's really important. One of the things that I'd like to say is that the environment is so key to making these children feel comfortable. And the minute, if you come out and see the nursery, I invite you to come see it. It's a real special place. A lot of consideration was given to what is developmentally appropriate for a child birth through 6. And there's a room with cribs, and siblings stay with each other. There's beds that are, just the right size for kids, as well as, like I mentioned, the motor room earlier. There's bikes and trikes and all kinds of fabulous, little jumping toys. And, it's really like a preschool and very set up, so that the kids can kind of forget about the stuff that's happening, in their lives. And so I think it's really important to understand, because it's not just for the kids, but it's also for the families. There's rooms for the mother to sit down and get counseling or resources, because they're there not only to reduce, maltreatment of children. They're also there to get resources and to get assistance and to get parental coaching if they're having a difficult time, because we've all been there. As a mother, I know how stressful it is, and I have those safety nets. I've had them, and they're still in my life, and I feel very fortunate, and like I said earlier, it is critical that the people out there in the Chicagoland area have these safety nets. 91% of the folks that come to the nursery, sister, and I know you know this, are single mothers who don't have support. 79% of them live on an annual income of $15,000 or less. So if you're fortunate and if you're out there, I invite you to come see the nursery. I invite you to come and help in any way that you can, whether that be in-kind donations such as diapers, formula, toys that might need a home if they're in good condition. If you are with a corporation in any way, we're looking for partners, to work with us. We had a partnership with Old Navy, who was wonderful in helping, provide, clothes for some of the children. If you, so be it, are looking to write a check, we would welcome that.
Sure.
For financial support. We are always, our need for funding is substantial. The cost to run the program, is substantial, and 100% of it is privately funded. So I believe that there need to be 5 more of these in the city, because we are servicing several, and we only take up to 8 at a time because of what we can allow in terms of caregiver ratio with the child.
And I think it's also important to mention that you talked about the counseling for parents. We are also trying to do some outreach. Let me just say that Maryville has, since 1883, been serving children who couldn't live safely at home. And in these last 7 years, the Crisis Nursery and a couple other programs are new programs that we've begun so that we can try to keep families together. We welcome children who are not able to live safely at home. We want them to have a safe haven at Maryville. But we also want to help families today not be separated if we can. And so the Crisis Nursery is an opportunity for families to get some help, and parents come to the Crisis Nursery for help, and they take their children home from the Crisis Nursery. So the last program I just wanted to mention was the Baby Talk classes.
Yes.
This is an outreach to parents who are caring for their children, but to help them with their little ones. Now, I know we just have a few seconds left. Anne, any last message you want to send?
I think one of the things that I'd like to say is that, as a society in the Chicagoland area, this is a critical program that needs to thrive and needs to continue to spread. And we've had over 3,700 admissions since it opened in 2006, and that says a lot. And I've already given some other statistics to support that.
So thank you, Anne Linnen, for joining us tonight. You can see why we're honored to have Anne Linnen chair the advisory board for the Crisis Nursery. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.